Okay, and this is my informative speech. Are you the type of person that likes macaroni noodles? Whether it's in macaroni salad or just plain old pasta salad? Or are you that type of person that likes cheese? You sit there and munch on mozzarella cheese and it just makes your whole life complete? Well, you're going to like this recipe. Put together the macaroni and the cheese, and you get macaroni and cheese. It's the greatest burst of flavor that you'll ever experience. Now, where did macaroni and cheese start from? Well, according to an article, the author is Rhodes. In 1969, in Northern Europe, it somewhere branched up in there. But so that means that it didn't exactly start in the United States. But the United States has a company named Kraft Foods that did take it to the next level and created an easy way to make macaroni and cheese. They started their box macaroni and cheese in 1937. It was during the Great Depression era. They did so because there were many people that struggled to pay their bills and pay for food and everything and make sure everything worked. So Kraft Macaroni and Cheese wanted to make something that was easy for the people to afford during the Great Depression. I learned all that from an article, again, the same article by Rhodes. You're going to love this recipe. I'm going to now go through a step-by-step process of how to make macaroni and cheese. Alright, and now it's time for our step-by-step instructions of how to make macaroni and cheese. First, you're going to need a pot, medium-sized pot. I prefer the medium size because it's not too big and it's not too small. If it were too small, the water would overflow and go everywhere. If it was too big, the noodles may not cook properly. Second, you're going to need a slotted spoon. I prefer one with holes because it's easier for the taste testing of the noodles later on. However, I do use a normal spoon as well for the end when we're mixing all the ingredients. Then you're going to need a strainer to strain your noodles at the end after they're done boiling. And then you need the box of macaroni and cheese. It comes with a cheese packet and the macaroni noodles that you're going to need for this process. You will also need milk, 1/4 cup of milk, and you will need, the recipe requires you have 4 tablespoons of butter, but I prefer 2. So now we're going to get started with this process. First, you're going to fill the medium-sized pot with 6 cups of water. So take a measuring cup and fill it with 6 cups of water. Now I prefer cold water, but that's just what I do. I mean, you can use hot or cold water to make this. Okay. And now you're going to put it on the stove and let it start to boil before you put the noodles in. As you can see, it takes a little bit to boil. I'd say 7 to 8 minutes to let it to boil. And once you see it to start bubbling, then you can put the noodles in and finish the process. Alright, and now as you can see, the water is starting to boil a little bit, and you can see the bubbles up there. So now it is time to add in the noodles. So you're going to take the box of noodles that comes with the Kraft macaroni and cheese packet, and you're going to dump it straight into the pot. Okay, and then you are going to just throw away the box, or if you need it for the recipe, it's also written on there. You're going to now take your slotted spoon and stir up those hard noodles to avoid them from burning, because if they burn, then that ruins the entire meal. So you're going to just slightly stir it here and there for the next 7 to 8 minutes, and after you are done stirring, you're going to taste the noodle. And if it is softer, that means it is done, and if it is still hard, then you might want to leave it to boil a little bit longer. Now, I prefer to follow the instructions, so I do between 7 and 8 minutes, but I sometimes do run over a minute or two, so it just all depends on whether you like your noodles harder or softer. Alright, and now as you can see, it is starting to get close to being done. It's been about 8 minutes. So now I will take a noodle out and taste test it to see if it is tender, and if it is tender, then it is good to go. Alright, yep, it's soft and that means it's good to go. So we're going to take the pot off the stove, turn the stove off, take the pot over to the strainer, and dump it in. And then I preferably take the pot back to the stove and get out any loose water you have in the noodles. And then I take it back over to the pot on the stove and dump the noodles in. Okay, and now you are going to take your ingredients, which would be a 1/4 cup of milk, 2 tablespoons of butter, and the cheese packet that was provided to you. First, I like to dump in the milk to make the noodles easier to stir. Then I add in the butter. I'll show you real quick. That's what happens when you put that in. Then you're just going to stir it. I use the other spoon for this process. I use the non-slotted spoon because it's easier to mix them. And you're just going to stir that all up. Another thing that I like to do is I put it over the hot burner so that it's easier for the butter to melt and for everything to mix well. And once you see that the butter is starting to melt, I will then add the cheese packet that Kraft provided you. And then mix that in as well. Make sure you're mixing very thoroughly because sometimes the cheese can stick to the spoon, so you don't want that to happen because then you'll lose out on some cheese. So you're going to just keep stirring. Again, sometimes the cheese can stick to the pot as well, so you want to scrape the edges and just keep mixing it up. And then you will have your final masterpiece of macaroni and cheese by Kraft. And that is my step-by-step process on making macaroni and cheese by Kraft. And now that you know how to make macaroni and cheese, you can see it's very simple and many people like it due to its simplicity. There are many positive things to eating macaroni and cheese, such as you get the dairy from the butter, the milk, and the cheese. And you get nutrition from the certain carbs that they include, such as the macaroni noodle. You're going to definitely want to get this meal. It's a great side dish with whatever you eat. Some things that I recommend is to eat it with chicken tenders, steak, pork chops, and if you're vegetarian, you can do a vegetarian burger or even a salad. Preferably, I do love salad, so I do think it would go great with that. It will lift the mood of anybody, and I hope you enjoyed this tutorial of how to make macaroni and cheese.